Today's guest is a best-selling author, retired lawyer, and former Assistant Attorney General from the US. In 2012, a routine X-ray of his leg found an anomalous bit of metal with 2 wires attached. Thus opened Pandora's box and added extra depth to his abduction event from 1977, the incident at Devil's Den. Please give a huge Koit welcome to Terry Lovelace. Hi Terry, and welcome to KoitCast.
Hi, it's nice to be here. I appreciate the invite. Thank you very much.
No worries, it's an honour to have you aboard, so I appreciate you coming along. Let's start with the old classic. Who are you? Where you're from? All that good stuff.
Sure. My name is Terry Lovelace, and I'm living in Dallas, Texas, USA.
Excellent. Okay. Let's jump straight in then with what brought you into the paranormal theatre? What was your introduction, your origin story, if you will?
Sure. There's one event that really plunged me into the paranormal. I saw flying saucers, I called them, back in 1961 and 1963 as a kid, you know.
Oh, cool.
And that wasn't real. I thought that was very cool. I thought that was a, you know, kind of an adventure. The incident that happened to me happened in 1977 at a place called Devil's Den State Park, which is just over the border from Missouri into Arkansas. And I didn't know it at the time, but the place has a long history of weird things happening.
Okay.
A friend of mine, guy I work with, suggested one night, I worked nights in the emergency room. I was active duty in the Air Force at the time. Suggested that we make a camping trip down to Devil's Den. And I'm like, what do I know about camping? I mean, I knew I was a city kid. I knew he was a city kid. And I just wasn't, you know, it doesn't sound like fun to me. And but that planted a seed and it grew on me. And we had 4 months to wait to get this nice long weekend so we could go down there and enjoy ourselves, hopefully.
Yeah, cool.
And we finally did. And we drove on the other side of the Arkansas border, a 6.5-hour drive from where we were stationed. We were stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, which is western central Missouri. It's where the B-2 bombers call home.
Okay.
And we got to Arkansas. We got to Devil's Den State Park. We made a point to dodge the ranger station because we didn't want to pay for a camping permit because we didn't want to stay on the campground. My friend Toby was an amateur astronomer, and he lived to watch the night sky. So he wanted a place with no light pollution. And
Makes sense.
Wasn't a campground. Yeah. So we drove around on our own and came to a chained part of the road where the road had turned from pavement to gravel to dirt pretty much. And with a big do not enter, no hunting, no camping, no fishing, no nothing. And I thought, you know, it's probably some nature preserve or something. And there was a chain across the road. But what they did was they had looped the chain around a post on the opposite end on a nail, and then took a padlock and just hung it on there. So if the Rangers wanted to go in, they didn't have to hunt for a key. They could just pick it up and drop the chain.
Loop it off, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we did. We lifted it off and drove in. And we drove for a while, and by happenstance, navigated us to there's a precipice, like a raised area of land that's almost triangular shape. And it's the height, just about the height of the trees that are around. And there's a dirt road that goes straight up. And we went up and it was gorgeous. So we're on this little plateau and there's maybe 4 inches of grass and just stunning because we had a view 360 degrees of everything all around us. And we thought, this is great. So we pitched our tent. We did all the fun stuff you do when you're camping. And we lit a fire, did a bonfire kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
ate some burnt hot dogs and sit around and we're talking.
Burnt hot. It's always burnt hot dogs, and the first one
Oh,
is always the worst.
absolutely. That was his, not mine. The we're having this conversation over the fire, across the fire, and the never having spent a night that I could ever remember in the forest, I didn't realize there were crickets, tree frogs, things that make noise. Crickets, I don't know. And we got all that stuff going on. So we're having trouble. I have to raise my voice to talk to him, and likewise. And we had a nice breeze going because it was June in Missouri, or Arkansas, and it was hot. So about 10 minutes after we finished our meal, probably around 9 o'clock p.m., I noticed that the sound went away. It just went from lots of racket to dead silent. And I listened for a second and it kind of spooks me. And I asked my friend, like he's going to know, Toby, is this normal, man? This quiet all around us? And he told me, yeah, we've been laughing and cutting up. We probably just quieted them. And then he kind of kidded me and said, don't worry, the bugs will come back and everything will be normal for you. And but they didn't, and it unnerved me. At that time, when I'm talking to him across the fire, I noticed that we lost the breeze too. It wasn't only dead silent; it was dead still. And I've talked to some other experiencers who experienced the same thing. I had kind of that experience when I was 6 years old and saw a flying saucer out of my backyard. When that happened, it was like I had my hands pressed over my ears. I could hear the sounds of the neighborhood, but everything was muffled.
Hmm.
And this encounter with the UFO when I was 6 years old lasted, 30 seconds maybe. So the breeze stops, and I'm going to bring it up and say, hey, this is really getting strange. And my friend has his head turned to the west, and he's looking at something. And I can't see what he's looking at because his torso's in the way. We're sitting on these air mattresses. So I stood up and I'm like, what are you looking at, man? And on the horizon, there was a little triangle of 3 white lights. And they were just far enough off the horizon that they could not have been, headlights, lights from a train, lights from an aircraft.
Because they were above the ground level.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now there were 3 lights there, and Toby said, look, if they're coming straight at us, there could be the illusion that it's not moving. Let's just watch it for a second, see what it does. Well, it didn't move. And we're talking about, wow, what could that be? We're debating it. And while we're debating it, it does move. And what it did was it rotated clockwise and aligned the base of the triangle parallel with the horizon. So the apex of the triangle was pointed up.
Up, yeah. Okay.
And then shortly thereafter, a matter of seconds, this thing starts to climb into the air at a pretty good clip. But, I have nothing to measure this by, but I think that it was about 10,000 feet maybe. When it leveled off, the thing went from horizontal to like this. So our view of the thing was now 3 lights in a row because the apex of the triangle is pointed at us.
Yeah.
And it's the tips of the triangle that are lit.
How long did it take from when it was first on the horizon to go up? Was it almost instant to that top point?
No, there were maybe 15, 20 seconds. It wasn't immediate.
But still a good clip. Yeah.
But a good, yeah. And as far as how fast it traveled,
yeah,
you're right. It traveled very fast. If you're talking about the speed of the thing, yeah.
So that must have unnerved you as well, knowing that.
It did unnerve us because, we were both active duty in the Air Force. We were medics, and we spent a lot of time on a flight line in an ambulance in case something goes wrong. So we were pretty familiar with aircraft. We saw a ton of them come and go. And we didn't know anything that had a triangular shaped set of lights on it. So
Yeah,
it
and
didn't
not
make
only
sense
that,
to me.
nothing that would go directly upwards other than an air balloon, and that doesn't go at a healthy clip, does it?
No, it does not. No,
Mm.
it does not. But the strangest thing is just about the time that this thing did a tilt and went horizontal instead of vertical. Um, and I've had other people tell me they've experienced this. I had this wave of calm wash over me, and it was almost like semi sedation. I wouldn't say that I was sedated, but my emotions were certainly muted. We weren't two human beings seeing this should be having an exchange, a verbal exchange. Of, man, are you seeing what I'm seeing? What is that thing? What could it be? And there was none of that from that point on.
And obviously,
Uh,
your adrenaline level would be kicking in then as well, wouldn't you? And then you start the shakes because of the adrenaline.
yes, yes, I think that's right. Um, and this is going to sound odd, but I believe it. And that is the calmness that we felt, that semi sedation, um, speaks to the level of influence that these things can have over human beings. And I think it was their influence that put us in that relaxed state. It felt like before you go in for a surgery, they give you something
Mm.
for anxiety, and it felt like that. It wasn't unpleasant, uh, but it was unusual.
Do you think, because
So,
obviously you, a bit, I'm sorry to interject here, so you're going to carry on the story, but obviously you've thought about this for a number of years since this event happened. Do you put it down to, at that stage, a projected beam, if you will, coming from the craft to calm you down, or do you think it's the intention telepathically from the beings that can travel that distance, therefore, into your mind and calm you down?
there was a beam of light, and for the sake of brevity, I'm kind of moving this along. When we first saw the thing, it's about 3,000 feet over our heads, and from the direct center of the triangle, we could see it was a huge black triangular shaped ship,
Hmm.
and it shot a purplish red laser down that hit our campsite and kind of danced around. It struck me in the chest a couple times. I never felt the thing. It hit my friend. It hit the tent, my car, the cooler, everything that we brought that wasn't there before us.
Hmm.
And my thought was, this thing's checking us out.
Like a scanning thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
neither of us said anything. And when that hit me in the chest, that could have um, done something too. But we had that relaxed feeling before we got to that point. So I'm not sure. I always thought it was maybe their intent.
Yeah.
Somehow they can do that telepathically.
Yeah. At a distance, obviously, and from, thousands of feet away or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, emotions are muted. We're not acting appropriate to what we're seeing. And this red laser came down, and this is 1977. I'd only seen lasers on TV. It was the first time I ever saw one
Hmm.
in real life. Uh, After that stop, it lasted 20, 30 seconds maybe, and then shut off. And then we just sat there in silence for a minute or two. And neither of us have said a word since this thing went like that. I take that back. Toby said, it's really moving now in relation to the thing going up and the
Yeah.
speed of it. But after that, we had no conversation. So Toby breaks the silence and says, show's over. He picks up his air mattress and goes into the tent, throws it down, and flops on top of it. And I had this feeling, this transition. There's a distinct difference between being calm, relaxed, and being sleepy. They're two separate things. And I transitioned into sleepy. All I wanted to do was pick up my air mattress, throw it in a tent, lay down, and go to sleep. And that's what I did. I picked it up, I followed my friend, threw in my air mattress, and that's the last thing I remember was my head hitting that yellow plastic pillow on this inflatable air mattress. And I was out. I had no dreams. I had no recollection. And I woke up sometime later, and at first I'm disoriented. I'm like, oh, where the hell am I? Oh, yeah, I'm camping with Toby. That's right. And what woke me were these lights. There was a set of flashing lights outside the tent that were flashing yellow, white, and sometimes a greenish hue. Um, and they're very bright, bright like a flash bulb from an old school camera, kind of bright.
Mm.
So it lit up the entire
Yeah.
inside of the tent. And I'm trying to think of a rational explanation for this. And I'm thinking, this is park rangers. Park rangers have that rack of lights on top of them, on top of their trucks. And I'm thinking, that's lights from a park ranger's truck. They're here to kick us out. And we weren't concerned about that. It wasn't the crime of the century. At worst, they'd kick us out. Um, and then I noticed my friend is on his knees and he's looking at something outside the tent. And in one of these flashes of light, I could see there were tear tracks reflecting from that flash of light. So my friend had been crying. And I couldn't imagine what would make this guy cry. And that raised my anxiety level, my fear level from, a 1 to probably a 9.
Mm.
And I asked Toby, I said, Toby, what is it? Is it park rangers? What's out there? And before I get to that, because he didn't answer the question, after I woke up, I looked down. I wore my combat boots that I wore in the military. I had them on my feet when I dropped on the mattress. I was certain of that. And they were laced up tightly. And I looked down, and both of my boots had been unlaced. And I wasn't angry or anything, but I was confused. How did this happen? Um, so I took off my boots to put them on properly. And when I did, I see my socks are on sideways. And of course, it never dawned on me that they had undressed us and redressed us without much care.
And no one puts socks on sideways because you know how annoying that is.
Yeah, and in the military, drums that into your head to take care of your feet. If you can't walk, you're no use.
That's right, yeah. Can I
Mm.
just ask a question, right? You said you felt a compulsion, if you will, to go to bed, get on your mattress and just sleep.
Yes.
What time was that roughly? Because it was 9 o'clock when you were doing all the other bits. Were you there half an hour?
I didn't look at a watch, but I can estimate for you. It was about an hour from, for maybe a little less, from first time we saw it till it moved up, was in the sky like this for a while, and then started that glide plane very slowly down until it was right over. Well, it wasn't right over our heads. We were at the edge of this plateau, thankfully. So this thing is kind of centered in this plateau that we're on. So that gave us an opportunity later on to see the outside of the thing. Because I looked out the flap on my side of the tent and I saw two things. I saw that this craft, whatever it is, had descended from 10,000 feet to about 3,000 feet. I'm guessing, but I think I'm pretty good at that. About 3,000 feet over our heads. So, and it was huge. It was big, like a medical building or something. It was just,
Mm.
and it's odd to see something like that levitated off the ground and there being no support underneath or above. It's just, that's kind of unnerving too.
It is. I think you hear those stories of these big crafts these days, and it's unnerving because we know, in theory, we haven't seen all the hidden stuff that the governments may have. But even now, we can't really do that. So back in '77, that's off the chart, isn't it? Like pure sci-fi.
It was to us.
Mm.
Yeah. And, for years, I was absolutely certain that our experience involved alien, extraterrestrial, extra dimensional. It involved people from, or beings from some other realm than Earth. But I've come to question that and wonder if we could have been subject to some kind of experiment by the Air Force. I don't know.
Well, let's explore some of those topics. I want to still get back to that question, or not. It's not really questioning it. It's more adding um, corroboration to the weirdness of going to bed early.
Yeah.
Assume it, you go out on a camping trip. You're up with your mate. You're having sausages and that. You're gonna have a laugh. Maybe if you had some beers or whatever, you'd have a drink. You ain't gonna go say, "Oh, I'm suddenly tired now. We've spent an hour together. I'm gonna fall on my mattress." Are you? You probably want to stay up till 12 together talking and having a laugh, presumably. So that's weird, isn't it?
It is weird. And you're absolutely right. Two normal human beings would have a verbal exchange to validate each other's experience of what we just
Hmm.
saw, because we saw something fantastic. And I think it's human nature to want that validated so that, you're seeing what I'm seeing.
Yes.
Uh,
So you're not the weird one. Exactly. You want to parse all these things out. And if it was me in that scenario, I'd want to talk about every question to get every answer. And I'm sure you'd be the same.
yes.
Weird. So
So let me,
you get up, your socks are on weird, your shoes are on weird. Then what?
yes. And I put them on properly and laced them up. And there are still the flashing lights outside, because it didn't take me long to tie my shoes. And I'm sure that these flashing lights are from a park ranger's truck. I mean, it's the only thing that made sense. Again, I said that I saw a tear track down Toby's face, and I asked him, "Hey, what's out there?" And he never did answer me. And that's what motivated me to get on my knees and look out of the flap in my tent. And that's when I saw that this thing had descended from 10,000 feet to about 30,000, pardon me, about 3,000 feet. So a 30-story building. It was, compared to what it was when we went to bed,
Hmm.
it was really close on top of us. And since we were offset on the edge of the plateau, we got a decent chance to kind of look at the side of this thing. And it was just this massive, massive craft. The second thing I saw was these little guys, these little beings, and I could only see them clearly because of the distance and because it's so dark. I couldn't see them all unless the lights were flashing. Well, the flashing lights weren't from a park ranger's truck. The flashing lights came from the lights that are on the tip of each apex of each point of the triangle. There were flashing lights from there. And that's what we were seeing. And that's, they were just insanely bright. But in that light, I saw about a dozen, maybe 15. I didn't count them. Little guys, classic, now, what people would call grays. They were maybe 3 feet tall, maybe a little taller. They were gray, and they wore some type of garment. I couldn't see it plain enough to know what it was. And they were kind of paired up in twos and threes, and they were walking around this plateau, just looking at stuff. And I don't know if they lost something, or I don't know what the object of that exercise was, but that's what I saw.
Hmm.
And I'm absolutely terrified, like my friend, that one of us is going to sneeze or something and draw attention, and they're going to come over and investigate us.
Because none of them at this point are looking at you.
You know what? I don't recall them looking in our direction, other than maybe panning the sky. But I didn't see them, focus their attention on us.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I can imagine that's exactly like the scene from a horror movie, isn't it? Where the main character is looking at this beast and then all of a sudden it turns around, So you've got that sort of suspense and anticipation. Yeah.
I we didn't know it, but they were long done with us. So they're walking around. Little guys are walking around. Underneath this triangle, there's a dome of white light, and it's a visible kind of milky light, like a searchlight shining
Hmm.
through fog, by the
Yeah.
shore. You see a cylinder of light. That's what this was, a cylinder of light. This thing was resting about 30 feet now off the floor of the plateau. So from 10,000 to 3,000 to just 30 feet above us. So it is now over our heads. And while we're watching, this column of light just clicks on, and these little guys all, it drew their attention immediately. Pardon me, drew their attention immediately, and they all turned in that direction and kind of slowly walked toward. Nobody was in a hurry, you know. They just slowly walked toward this column of light, and they would step into the column of light one at a time, and they would pixelate out and be gone. And I assume that's how they went up.
Mm.
Very much like the old school Star Trek. I'm not a sci-fi fan, but
Oh, you know, I love Star Trek, so I understand what you're getting at.
oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, pixelated out, and the last one in this line of little guys steps into the light. It takes him up, and boom, the light turns off. And the lights that are flashing so bright on the tips of this thing uh, dimmed a lot, and they turned all white. And I think that's because they wanted to look like stars. I think that's
Hmm.
maybe, I don't know, maybe part of their covert, their camouflage. I don't know, I'm guessing. Um, and while we watched, this thing lifted off. And it didn't take off like a rocket ship. It took off like a hot air balloon. It just gently moved from 30 feet off the ground and just gently moved up. And the higher it went, the faster it went. And we saw it as 3 points of light, and then 1 point of light, and then it was gone. And we had no idea what time it was. You know, we both, as medics for our job, we needed reliable watches, because, you know, we take pulse and you know, we note time of events on a
Yeah.
report. So we both had both wearing a nice mechanical watch, which was the standard of the day. Both of our watches, mine stopped at 2:30 on the nose, Toby stopped at 2:34. Both of our watches were broken. They wouldn't work. And somebody suggested to me that that could have been, those mechanical watches were subject to failure by being near electrical stuff, you know, or magnetic stuff.
Electromagnetical energy. Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that's the deal. I can't think that both of them just by, you know, happenstance happened to stop. No, that
Yeah,
didn't happen.
no. Too much of a coincidence, and it's happening at a weird time, so it's obviously cause and effect. Yeah.
So we had no idea what time it was. Well, it turned out it was about an hour or less before sunrise. And we're still talking in hushed tones. And we're talking just by whispers because even though we saw this thing take off and we saw the little guys go into it, we had no idea what might be out there. And it's pitch dark out there. And Toby has a flashlight, and it's, you know, something he had around the house. It's just marginal. It's not really a
Hmm.
whole lot of use. And I want to go right then. I said, you know, let's get our stuff and get out of here. And, you know, actually, pardon me, I misspoke. Toby's the one that wanted to go boom right away. He wanted us to dart to the car, get in and drive off right now. And I said, I'm not moving from this spot until sunup.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I was just a piece of canvas, but I felt like I had cover. I had something over my head. But he convinced me we should go, and we did. We darted to the car. I had my car keys, and he had his flashlight. Had my wallet. He had his. Everything else we left there. His nice Coleman cooler, the tent, all the stuff that we brought. We didn't care. All we wanted was to get in the car and put distance between us and that plateau.
Hmm.
And Toby had a very good sense of direction. I mean, like an unerring sense of direction. He's one of these people that could orient himself to cardinal points. He could say, yes, that's north, that's south. I can't do that. So because it was nighttime, I had to rely on him to help us navigate out of there. And in the middle of the night in a dark forest with just two headlights, it was crazy. But
You going fast as well, or were you just like crawling along?
no, I had I been in a Range Rover, I might have been moving fast. But I was in a 1966 Chevy, and
Oh,
it
big
wasn't,
beast, yeah.
it wasn't built for that terrain.
Mm.
It's rocky. It's especially on the incline, the decline,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
going back to the roadway. So as soon as we hit pavement, yeah, I did. I picked up some speed and we made our way to the highway as fast as we could. And we're just glad to get out of there.
What a harrowing story. Yeah. Then what happened? And then I'll come back and talk to about some of the events there because there's a lot of questions that I have about it.
Sure, absolutely. Um, I'm just going to jump ahead and name some important stuff.
Sure, sure.
There's a lot of trivial stuff in between, but it was important, I think, that we made a pact between us that we would not say a word. We wouldn't tell anybody what we saw because we were active duty in the Air Force. We're working in a hospital and had our superiors. We were enlisted guys. Had our superiors found out that we're saying such a thing, they'd have sent us off for a psychological evaluation and probably just kicked us out of the Air Force. I
Mm.
didn't want that. I wanted the GI Bill for its education benefits.
I don't blame
So
you. Yeah.
yeah,
Why would you want to lose money?
that's right. Um, and the second thing, real quick, we went down there like two teenagers, and I think we went back like two adults. I can't. I don't know what made this happen, but we Toby and I were friends. We were both recently married, and our wives were friends. And I suddenly wanted nothing to do with the guy, and I can't put my finger on why that happened, but it happened, and we drove 3 hours in silence. It was very uncomfortable. There's a book by a guy named Ray Fowler, published in 1963, called The Allagash Four. And it's about four guys that all know each other. They're friends. They go out, they drink, they hunt, they fish. Well, they happen to be fishing in a remote area in Maine, uh, the northeastern state in the United States. And they were on this lake and they wanted to night fish. So they went out in a canoe and they saw a thing of light come over them and lit up the inside of the canoe. And then they have missing time. They don't know what happened after that. Just like us, they went from having this event, seeing this event, passage of time, to picking up the life thereafter. And they planned on staying there for 3 days. They just pitched their camp. And the guy who's driving the car says, I'm done, let's go. And the following morning, they packed up and left. And he told me that there was no conversation between the two of them. It's a very famous song.
Yeah, I know the one you mean. It's the one, isn't it, where when they go out on the lake, their fire is quite roaring, and when they go back, it's out. I believe it's that case, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yep, they made the tower to act as a beacon so they could find their way back to the right part of the shore.
right spot. Yeah, yeah. That's interesting that because I've never collated that or put those two together before, where people sort of like put that distance between themselves. Do you think it's down to a trauma event? And that's you don't want to be associated with them because the trauma's there for you both? Do you think that's what it
No,
is?
I don't think so.
Oh,
You know how close identical twins are.
mm-hmm.
Well, with the Allagash Four, two of the guys were the Weiner brothers, and they were very close, and they were drifted apart
Oh.
immediately after this thing. All
Unusual for
four of them.
twins, definitely, definitely, yeah.
And I hate to keep going back to it, but I think it speaks to the level of influence these things can have over us. Because four people make a very credible witness when four people see something,
Yes.
and
A
one
strong
person
case, yeah, that's right.
not so much. Uh, and your question about the trauma, I
Yeah.
think I think that would have made us talk more. I think that would have, because we should be validating each other's story.
Hmm.
So I don't get it. I don't get it. But I wrote a book. I Incident at Devil's Den. I published in 2018 on Amazon, and I said if you've had a weird experience and you want to talk about it, I'm here to listen and treat your email strictest of confidence. And to date, I have almost 5,000 emails from people all over the world. And I think I'm kind of a data guy. And I check off the points of, they saw a saucer, they saw a triangle, they were, in the middle of nowhere, they were in an urban area. It's happened to people in apartment buildings.
Hmm.
And then that drifting apart, because that stood out. There were family members that saw something in the backyard, and no one would ever talk about it. And this guy wrote to me and said, "It's the weirdest thing. We never ever discussed it." And he said, 30 years later, Uncle Joe is sitting around, Thanksgiving dinner, and says, "Hey, do you guys remember when we saw that UFO when we were at the motel?" And he said he felt like somebody punched him in the gut. And it was just, everybody was shocked. And yeah,
Yeah. What do you put that down to? Like an implanted suggestion. Let's just call it a hypnotic seed or something planted in the brain, so that people are forced apart because stories can't come together, and then we can't piece together the puzzle. Do you think that's what it is?
I do. And I should share with your audience that I do have an implant, and it's on film. In my right knee, there was a square metallic object about the size of a fingernail with two small wires attached to it. And then below my knee, there was a collection of, it turned out to be bone tissue arranged in a floral pattern, just crazy stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Not
and
natural.
not natural at all. So I have this object in my knee, but I don't remember ever having any surgery. I don't remember having any trauma to that knee. I mean, other than the skin knee as a kid. But if someone was going to implant something in my leg, there should have been a surgical scar, because I don't think you can violate the surface of the skin, especially in a part of the body that's prone to move,
Hmm.
and stitch it up and have it heal and not leave a scar.
How
So
did you come across this item? I mean, was it giving you jip across the years that led you to find it, or?
I woke up in the morning and I couldn't bear weight on my right leg. So I get all my medical care from the Veterans Hospital, from the VA. So
Okay.
I told my wife, "You got to drive me to the VA. Something's wrong with my knee." And what they what I had was a thing called a Baker's cyst. Nothing to do with baking. Baker was a guy that,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to bake one of those.
found it, and it became a thing in medical. And what it is it's a benign cyst that sits right under the patella or the kneecap. And it's painful for about 2 weeks, goes away on its own, Tylenol and crutches, that's it. But in the process of x-raying my leg to look for the Baker's cyst, they found these two anomalies in my knee.
And when
And
was this?
this was, trying to remember the exact date. I want to say October 25th, 2012.
Whoa, so a shed load of years later then.
It,
Do you
there
think that
was.
that implant or object or collection of objects were from the 77 incident?
I'm asked that question all the time, and I'm
Oh,
unsure. I saw UFOs twice when I was a kid. And I mean, there was no mistaking this. These were silver metallic objects. Um, I don't know if I could have been taken then, maybe, and put the thing in my knee, or
mm.
maybe as a teenager. Who knows? I don't know if I can connect this to our 1977 experience or not.
Either way, though, whether it was prior or it was the 77, it had been in your leg for 30 odd years, um, causing you no issue, in theory, because
Correct.
yeah. So what's that telling you? A foreign object in the body normally causes pain or discomfort or something else, doesn't it? So there must be something in that technology that prevents negative feedback.
I'll tell you, I wrote this book more as a catharsis for me, um, to deal with the trauma of 1977. Um, and I had no idea that I thought I'd sell 150 books and, have a box in my garage or something. Um, but I've sold almost 30,000 if you count audiobooks. Um, so there's something in it that resonates with people. And I don't know, I had this guy, Tom DeLong, who's a professional rock musician.
That's it. He was from Blink 182, wasn't he? I think.
Correct. Blink 182, who formed an organization called To the Stars Academy. And Tom DeLong called me. I published the book March 18th, I believe. And about 30 days later, Tom DeLong calls me. And I really had no idea who he was. I recall we played his Blink 182 at my daughter's wedding or reception. So he's like, "Hi, Terry, it's Tom DeLong." And I'm like, "Hey, how you doing, Tom?"
Yeah, because you had no idea. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Mm.
And he said, "I'm here with Lou Elizondo, General McCardle." Well, I don't know. And there was a third guy, and I can't tell you who it was because I can't remember.
Okay.
There would have been a fourth: Tom DeLong, General McCardle, Lou Elizondo,
Chris Mellon, maybe.
Hmm? Say what?
Could have been Chris Mellon, maybe. I know he was
Could have
involved.
been Chris Mellon.
Yeah.
Could have been what's the other guy? Um, Hal
Hal
Pudoff.
Pudoff. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. If I had to name somebody, it would have been one of those two. So, yeah, he said, "I understand that you had a visit, you think?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know when, but I have this thing in my knee." And he said, "Well, I also had a problem right after I published the book with helicopters buzzing my house, flying over my house." And I didn't understand that either. I thought they rerouted the traffic copter over a house or something. Maybe it's an
Mm.
accident because they always come in the morning. They always come between 9 and 11 a.m. At that time in the morning, if I go out to take their picture, I have the sun on one side of me to my right and this huge oak tree to the left. So my field of vision really is in back of my home. So limited to that 180 degrees
Okay.
of sky. And I took pictures of these helicopters, and none of them have an N, an alphabetical symbol N, like in Nancy, and then a string of letters. And being a lawyer, I went and looked up the laws on helicopters under codified federal regulations. And it states plainly in there that all helicopters that originate from the United States or under United States control uh, must display that large N. And then it goes on in trivia to say how tall it has to be, how wide it has to be, how visible, what kind of font you use. And then the string of digits that identify that particular vehicle. And there was nothing on the side of these helicopters. And at the very bottom of the law, there's a little paragraph for exceptions. And the exceptions are military and, quote, certain government agencies.
Yeah, which it opens the door to a wealth of hidden government agencies, doesn't it?
It does. It
Mm.
does.
And what did
So
you put down those helicopters' reasonings for buzzing you?
I know that it had something to do with my knee. I mean, then that was the catalyst to get this thing going.
Okay.
So I think it was because of what's in my knee. And I don't know why it started. I don't know why they were there. and they would come and they would go, but always in the morning. And I sold my house. We sold our house and moved to a new area and got a little house in a subdivision. The first night that we stayed in this house, uh, I woke up the following morning and I heard that familiar whoop, 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 whoop. And I'm like, expletive. I grabbed my phone and I go running out the side door, and there was a green military helicopter about 500 feet directly above my house. And as soon as I come out the door, it sees me and it peels off and goes away. So, and I've not been visited from them since. That was the last time we were harassed by a helicopter.
Here's a
So,
strange question. You've probably been asked this before, but it's worth asking. Has anyone else seen these helicopters at the same time when you had seen them? Could anyone
not,
verify that they were there?
not at the same time, but I've got probably out of the 4,000 plus emails that I've received from people, uh, there are probably 30 or 40 people in that mix who had an experience where they saw something or experienced something, and then the helicopters became a
Came along
nuisance.
with it, yeah. See, now I wonder, and the reason I ask that question is not to pick it at it part of the story, is to almost theorize that are those helicopters just being seen by you because they're somehow projected just to you? That's almost like a screen memory or cover for a different craft that might be there.
Yes, and I know the answer to that, and
Oh,
it's cool, because my wife could see them,
well that's it. That's what I wanted. Yeah,
and my neighbors were likewise annoyed by this wah 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 wah,
yeah.
and running outside trying to chase them with a phone to take a picture of them, and so yeah, everybody could see them. But I'm glad you brought that up because that brings up a incident that happened. My wife and I had been on a medical appointment, and we, we came out of the doctor's office. The parking lot was in the rear. So we walked around to the parking lot. I had my car keys in my hand, and I look up, and here is this silver disc, and it's big, and it's right over our heads. And I'm like, holy, look at that.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have
And
to
I
censor
saw,
yourself if you don't want to, by the way.
yes. And I could see there was a woman about 15 feet from us holding her car key, and she's looking up, and her mouth is open. And I said, Madam, can you see what I'm seeing? And she just goes like that. So she saw it. Here's the weird part, my wife couldn't see it. She
Hmm.
did not see it. I'm like, can't you see it? It's right there. And she's like, nope, don't see a thing. Nothing wrong with her vision, but she couldn't see it.
It
Uh,
makes you think that you, as a person, and that lady have slightly wider vision or can see more of the spectrum, light spectrum, than your wife can. So when she's looking, it's vibrating in a sort of like frequency that her eyes can't pick up. That's a
yeah,
potential, is all.
I mean, that would make sense. That would make sense
Hmm.
as a scientific explanation that I think would be possible. Um, and the other possibility, which sounds far fetched, but I think it's, at least some part of the equation, is that they're only seen by who they want to be seen by.
Yes, yes, I've heard that. That's interesting. Selective viewing of something. Yeah.
Yes.
That's weird how you could do that because that would still mean that they would have to attune themselves to the frequency of you and not to the frequency of a plethora of other people that might happen to look. That's one hell of a
Yes.
technology.
Yes. And
Hmm.
the Tom DeLong sent a medical doctor, and he asked me not to use his name. He was very kind to me, who retook my X-rays and looked at this thing, and he wanted me to go through my story. And he had a guy there with a tape recorder, and I went through my entire story, everything that happened to me from childhood, and it took 2 days uh, to present. And he said that this thing in my leg looks like an RFD device, a device that's there to pick up signals. Now, what it
Just
would do
picking
with
them
this,
up, not transmitting.
No, doing both.
Ah, okay.
Uh, he called it an RFD chip, and I have no idea what that is. But
Radio
um,
frequency, presumably.
yes,
Yeah. Wow. Is it still in your knee?
it is not. And that is a crazy story in itself. Um, I had this thing in my knee, and right after we had this event, Toby and I, we both had terrible nightmares, um, phobias, um, very difficulty sleeping, which is very common for people to see stuff like this.
Hmm.
Uh, I still sleep with the light on. It's the only way I can be comfortable. Um, and what was I going with this?
About the object in your knee. You
Oh,
said you
yes,
haven't got it in there anymore.
yes. Um, in 2013, about 8 months after they discovered the thing in my knee, of course, I had copies of the X-rays on a CD-ROM or whatever you call it. I still do. Um, and when I saw the X-rays, it just creeped me out because I'm looking at something I don't know how it got in my body. And the first place my mind goes is back to 1977, and that creeped me out. So I knew I wanted this thing out of my leg, but I knew that if it's extraterrestrial in origin, that's going to be a very valuable thing to have.
Hmm.
So I went to the VA and I talked to a surgeon and I said, "Can you take this out for me?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "Can you take it out with a forensic protocol?" In other words, it goes, everybody who touches the thing until it's in my hands signs, dates, put the time. It's what they do. Like if they take a bullet out of somebody, they use the same protocol.
Okay.
Um, but he said, "Yeah, we can do that." And my plan was to get this thing in my hands and send it to Tom DeLong. Was the best thing I could think. And the surgeon at the VA, I had a heart attack in 2005. And the surgeon at the VA said that he won't operate on me because, in the United States at least, the standard of care is if you got something foreign in your body and it's been there and it's never caused you a problem, we leave it alone.
Yeah.
And he says, we're at the VA here. He says, there are probably 30, 3,000 people walking around this building right now with, shrapnel in their knee or something. He said, we just can't do that. We won't do that. And he says, plus it's a risk versus benefit analysis. The thing's not bothering you, so we would subject you to anesthesia and, um, a surgical procedure, and both of those have risk.
Hmm.
So they don't do it. So the standard of care in this country is, you let it lie. I called a surgeon in Tijuana, Mexico, and spoke with him. Nice guy. And I said, "Here's what I got." He said, "Send me a copy of your X-rays." I did, and he said he could do, a forensic removal of the thing in my knee. I wanted somebody there in the room in the operating theater with me who could be a witness to say, "Yes, I was in that room. I didn't see anything swapped or switched. That's the object that was taken out of his knee." And my wife was going to do that role. Um, I talked to him in October, right around Halloween, right around the 31st, toward the end of the month, and can't give you an exact date. Um, I woke up on November 17th, uh, 2013, and I've got this incredible pain both at the top of my hips. It wasn't like the pain I experienced with the Baker's cyst, but I had pain above my knee on both sides, but no blood. It was weird. I had this perfectly circular wound, and I could look at it with the lights on, and I could pry it apart a little bit. I could see almost down to my bone. I could see all this tissue and stuff.
Crikey.
And I told my wife, but what the hell has happened to me? She says, I don't know. And then the thought crosses my mind, I bet they came and took the merchandise back.
Hmm.
And, they didn't put it in, maybe they threaded it down, but the thing was closer to my knee. It was more, down from there. But I had the feeling that the thing was gone. So I took copies of my x-rays on copy paper. And it's a Saturday, and I'm like, who's going to give me an x-ray? Because in this country, at least, you can't just walk into an x-ray clinic and demand an x-ray. You need to have a prescription from a medical doctor or someone.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, who can do this for me? And I thought maybe a dentist or maybe not a podiatrist, a chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah.
So, because I know that they look at probably 100 X-rays a week. So I went to an office about 10 miles from my house, and I went in, and they're busy, and I'm a walk-in, and they said, "Yeah, we can see you, but it's going to be a wait." And I'm like, "That's fine. I have all time in the world." So finally, the chiropractor calls me, and he says, "Okay, now," and they had me fill out a form saying, "Where's your pain?" I said, "Top of my leg." And then no, 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 no to the rest of the stuff, my name and address. That's all you need. Um, I said, in the top of my knee, or pardon me, in the top of my leg. And I pull my pants down to my knees, and I showed him these holes. And he says, "How did you get these?" And I said, "Doc, I don't know. I just woke up with them." And he said, "I've never seen anything like this." And I said, let me tell you the rest of the story. I think I was abducted by aliens in 1977, and I think they could have been a party to this. He kind of looks at me like, "Are you nuts?"
Mm.
Which is what I'd expect. But he said, "I'll help you get an X-ray." He said, "I'll get an X-ray for you, and I'll do two things. I'll get your X-ray, and I'll read them for you, tell you what I see. But he said, I need you to do two things, and that is not use my name or the name of my practice." Because I told him I'm writing a book about this. So that's what I did. They did X-rays November 17th of the following year, and it's gone. It's not there.
So someone took it, be it a human agency or the others.
Yes, somebody took it
Hmm.
through some means that didn't wake me up. And
It Go on.
I think in my mind's eye, surely people have had this happen to them. Surely somebody has had the object removed under a forensic protocol and analyzed. Now, there was a Dr. John Lear, who passed away in 2014. And
Wasn't it Roger Lear?
Roger Lear, yes. Did I say
Yeah,
Roger?
John Lear's the
Oh,
aerospace
the
son,
aerospace guy,
yeah,
yes.
I think so.
Thank you. Yes,
It's all right.
it was Roger Lear, who was a podiatrist, a foot doctor. So he's not licensed as a medical doctor, he's licensed as a podiatrist. And as such, his ability to operate, to do anything medical above the ankle, doesn't exist. His territory is strictly from the ankle down to the toes. So in California, he did a removal of a foreign object from a guy's arm that he said was suspect, and he pulled out what looked like a piece of a glass, maybe. You know how glass, if you find it on a beach, the sand has eroded the edges off, so it's kind of smooth all around.
Yeah, I think I've seen the video to this actually, because I'm sure
Yes,
there's videos of his stuff online. Yeah, little black object.
yes, that's right. That's the
That's
same thing.
it.
Yes. So, but what happened was, he put that out on YouTube, and podiatry is policed by there's a board of people that enforce administrative law. And if you've got, a medical doctor, there's a separate group for that. Well, there's a group that just polices podiatry. And they have one of the people is always a state's attorney, somebody who has the power to go to a judge and revoke somebody's license to practice medicine. And they called him in for an interview, and he lost his license. And that's when he was somewhere in South America. You might know. I don't know what it's exactly.
I can't remember, to be fair.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would have liked him to help me out, but
I know he passed away, didn't he? Yeah, he died, unfortunately, as well. Not well, a few years back. It's now the thing with the implant, right? Let's parse it out as to whom it came from and who took it back. It almost seems or alludes to a human agency putting it into you and taking it back. That's what I think, because it seems tied to the helicopters, and RF frequencies sounds like a human technology. Radio frequencies is what we use. And judging on the fact that the alien contact came to you via intention across a distance, why would they need a little chip to find you? Do you know what I mean? That's why it kind of.
Exactly what you mean. And
yeah, is that where you sit?
I think of a couple of options, and I used to think, this was alien from something else in this universe. Is possible, but I think today I think it's a lot more possible than I did 2 years ago. When I left off at Roger Lear, and Roger was deceased, so he couldn't help me out. I spoke to a guy in Houston, Texas, named Daryl Sims.
Oh, I know the chap, yeah.
Yes, and Daryl was Roger Lear's assistant. And Daryl claims that he was in the operating theater and assisted Dr. Lear during the removal of these things. And he says there's 30 or more objects. And he carries around a little case full of these things. Nothing that looks like what I had in my knee. What I had in my knee looked like something man-made. What he had was pieces that looked like maybe that sliver of glass that I described, or a pebble, or like a steel needle or something. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was just different from what I had. But your question was, is it our government? Is it my government? Maybe your government too. I don't know. Responsible.
It's definitely yours. Don't you dare put the blame on us.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't dare. I think it's possible that there's some kind of agreement between our country and ET, and that agreement allows them to take, for experimental purposes, human beings. And there are a lot of people in this country that go missing in national parks and national forests. Lots of people. Or I think the other option is that maybe there's an agreement and they're stepping outside the bounds of that agreement, violating the terms by taking human beings. But I think wherever they come from, I think they definitely do take people. I'm certain they take cattle.
And yes, that's a whole subgenre there, isn't it? Alone, the cattle abductions and mutilations. Yeah.
Linda Moulton Howe is the lady to talk to about that.
Yeah, I know she's high into that one. She did a great documentary, didn't she? I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list to watch.
Strange Harvest.
That's right. Yeah,
it's worth watching.
Yeah, I definitely will at some stage.
My third idea of possibly how this thing got in my knee is that ET is operating here on their own, without any agreement, without any oversight, and they just do what they want to do because they can.
And of
And I
those
think
three options, where do you mainly put your money?
I think I'd have to put it on the last one. Um, that they do what they want, and that's it. I toy with the idea that my government has some type of contractual relationship with ET that grants them, maybe it's a quid pro quo. Maybe that we agree to allow them to take X number of human beings for whatever purpose. And in return, we get technology, we get something. I think that quid pro quo is what makes that seem like a possibility to me.
Yeah, and that's where I would put my eggs in that basket, or to use the other metaphor, my money on that um, bet. But here's the horrible thing about that is that somebody in a government, on behalf of the human race, said, yeah, just go and have people. That's awful.
Yeah, it is. It's frightening.
Mm. Maybe they had no choice. I don't know. But either way, someone has said, and they've signed it or ticked it or whatever to say, yeah, you can have people. And we don't care about our citizens really. You can have them.
Right now, there's a huge battle going on in the United States with three entities involved. There's the United States Congress, there's the Pentagon, and the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense and the Pentagon are working together in concert to stop Congress from finding out.
Oh, that's right. All the probing they're doing at the moment. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they want to keep that stuff secret. And what's interesting is they farmed out a lot of that work to private companies. Like Boeing, and you name 50 of them, but they
Mm.
farm those out on contract to private companies. And there's a thing called a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. And government agencies are subject to that. Private contractors are not. So the only
Yes.
way you could see those documents would be to file a lawsuit against them. I don't know how you would do this, and get a subpoena for their records. And I don't think that's ever going to happen.
No, I'm with you on that, and I'll get to that question of where you think we are with disclosure later on, because I think we need to cover a lot more ground in between then. I want to go back to your encounter. The lack of sound thing is really fascinating because it opens up a number of possibilities. And this is what I've written. Is that because everything is frightened in the area that it shuts up and listens? Because when things feel under attack, they naturally quieten down, don't they? That's a
Yes, like my friend said, we were laughing and cutting up, and the noise of our voice probably quieted them, and that is a possibility.
yeah. So that's the first possibility. The second one is, do ETs put you, i.e., the potential abductee, into a pocket of like null space? So you're sort of like separated from everything around you, or are you out of the matrix? Do you know what I mean? There's a
Oh
number of
yeah,
ways of looking at it. What have
yeah.
you thought about the lack of sound?
Well, I've thought about, based on my experience as a child, when I'm in my backyard in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, and there are, you know, people hanging up laundry, kids, dogs, trucks, cars, uh, people out walking. It was a beautiful day in May. And I'm the only one that saw this thing. And it sounded just like I had put my hands over my ears. All of the sounds of the neighborhood were distorted, muffled. And then when the thing shut off, my hearing went back to normal. So that would kind of go along with your proposition that maybe I was encapsulated somehow in some type
Yes,
of.
that makes sense. Yeah, shielded from the sound wave sort of thing. Yeah. I know there's no way you can prove it or disprove it, but it's interesting to work out what theory we think it is, because then that can almost suggest the technology, can it? If we,
Yeah. And,
hmm,
like, maybe our government is doing all of this.
you'd hope not.
I'd hope not. I sure do.
Yeah, but then
But I
we
can't
can't be
rule that
sure, can
out.
we? Yeah.
No, no, you
Um,
can't rule it out.
you'll have been asked this before, but I want to ask it again. Is your blood type rhesus negative?
It is not. It's O positive.
Okay. So that's
I don't know
interesting,
what
isn't it?
Toby's blood type was, because I didn't think there was any relevance to knowing his blood type when I knew him.
Well, nor would you. I wouldn't know any of my mates' blood types. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But the reason I brought that up, I know you'll know, but for people who listen who don't know, it seems like a common trope amongst abductees or experiencers that they tend to be Rh negative blood type, which suggests there's something about that part of humanity that warrants investigation. So that's why I brought that up. Here's another one. Since your experiences, have you found any new skills that you've got? I.e., have you become psychic?
You know, if if you have a range where psychic is here and normal out of the womb human being is here, um, I'd say that I was at this stage on the XY graph,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm now a little closer. But I've never called myself a psychic. I've never said I had psychic abilities, but I do have what I call heightened intuition, and I didn't have it before this event in 1977. And I also, my wife and I, have had poltergeist activity in our home over the years. Maybe every other year, once a year or so, our television would turn on, in a living room, family room, in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. And it really, really spooked us at first. But, we've been together almost 50 years. So we've lived in a lot of houses and I've lived in a lot of places. And it has happened here that the TV turns on at 3 a.m.
Is
And
it the
now,
same? Is it the same TV that you took from house to house?
oh, no, 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 no.
Okay,
I'm
well
talking
that tells
about,
you a different story then, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, decades separate the two. So we probably had several. I didn't take a television when I went to Samoa. I bought one when I was there. It didn't, a shipping container was too expensive. So we sold most everything we had.
And also the old ones, the old CRT TVs, cathode ray tube ones, they didn't really have timers on it to turn them on like today's ones. So yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
an excuse for an upgrade, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Of house or TV, yeah.
Yes,
Does that frighten you? Or do you not care?
it did. It frightened my wife and I to death. Um, and, you know, this is going to rub some of your audience the wrong way, and some of your audience will embrace it. Um, there very well may be a spiritual component to all of this. And I kind of separate these things because there's a distinction between, in my mind, what's a paranormal event and what's a supernatural event. Maybe there isn't, I don't know, but the TV turning on in the middle of the night, I classify as more spiritual than a paranormal thing.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I've talked to a number of people now across this the journey I'm on, and again, it seems like a common thread that these are separate things, but there's a degree of overlap, and it's just finding where that overlap begins and ends. Who
I
knows?
agree with that.
Mm.
And you asked me if this frightened us. After some years of this, it's just a nuisance. If the TV pops on, whichever one of us happens to be the most awake, will go into the room and grab the remote, turn the TV off, and I always say, knock it off. Makes me feel better, and I can go back to bed and go back to sleep. So it's just a
Yeah.
nuisance.
At least it's a nuisance rather than a threat, which means it's not. It almost is a soft poltergeist, so to speak. It's not a malicious one in that way.
Yeah, but someone suggested that maybe the thing in my leg triggered it.
Oh yeah, that's a possibility. Has it
Um,
happened since the thing's
it
gone?
has.
Ah,
It
okay.
has.
Well, yeah, that was a nice hypothesis, though. Um, I was just looking at another question there. It was just a continuation of the last one I did. Since having these experiences, right, and you found the chip via the X-rays, which then made you think back to your 77 encounter and stuff. Have you had hypnotic regression, or have you been wary of going into that?
I have been wary of going into that. Yvonne Smith, who is probably Yvonne Smith, and I know Kathleen Martin are probably the top two hypnotherapists in this field that do this. And Yvonne Smith has done this for 30 years. I don't know how long Kathleen Martin has been doing it. By the way, she happens to be Betty and Barney Hill's, actually Betty Hill's niece.
That's right. Yeah, I she had encounters herself, which makes it even more linked. You know, it's that familial link.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yes,
so regression, you were wary of it.
I still am. But I'm curious. I was curious enough I went to a place called the Wellness Institute in Seattle and learned hypnotherapy. And I thought that might give me some insight and that might make it more palatable for me to turn over my psyche to someone else in a
Mm.
hypnosis session. Well, you really don't turn over your psyche. It's all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, as they say. Um, I'm not sure what I would find with that. I I've never had a clear linear memory of what happened to me that night. I wish I did, but I don't. But I do have flashes, just bits and pieces. Um, and that's all I have. And those are frightening enough.
Hmm. I think I'd sit exactly where you would be now if I was in your position having experienced these things, because whilst the drive to find the answers might be very strong, the drive to not be traumatized further is slightly stronger because you don't know what you're opening the door to, and I know that's what you'd be going through, I presume.
I think that would open a door. That's my fear,
Hmm.
that it would open a door. Yeah.
Do you think it's opening the door to looking back at something that you don't want to look at, or opening the door to further incidents?
Well, things that happened to me that I can recall. And over the years, through nightmares, I've had bits and pieces, but I don't know if they're reality. I don't know if I'm actually remembering an event or is my mind fabricating this event
Hmm.
in order to process it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't see the need to put myself in that situation.
Yeah. I don't blame you. Seriously, I would struggle with it myself. But do you have that conflict in your head of the need for answers, or are you comfortable not knowing?
You know what gave me comfort is I made my living in the law. I was a lawyer. I was an assistant attorney general, both for the U.S. territory of American Samoa and for the state of Vermont. And a lot of my adult working life has been in public service. And I know that I couldn't write that book while I was in that position. And I couldn't. Who can you really trust? I mean, you got a good friend, you think that, oh, I can trust this guy. I don't trust anyone. And had that come out, it would have cost me my job. I was fearful of publishing this book so much that, 6 years between 2012 and 2018. So,
How long
but
did
we
it take
finished
you
the
to
book.
write it?
Pardon?
How long did it take you to write it? Literally the 6 years, or had you written it quick and then just sat on it?
Like I said, I wrote an outline. And because I don't write anything without doing an outline first. I know a lot of people like to just grab a pen and paper and start, and they think that they're more creative, and maybe they are. I don't know, but I need that structure. So I had sketched out an outline back about 2014, and I just kept it around. And I pulled it out in late you mean December 2026, pardon me, 2016, and started writing the book. And really, it took place in just about the entire year of 2017. I finished it in December, went to an editor, did some artwork for the cover, and by the time we did all that, it was March, and that's when I published it. Um, but that was for me, um, a way of getting over this, a way of and I do, but I found out from all these kind emails that all of these people have entrusted to me, a stranger, um, tell me stories that they've not even told their spouse. Um, it made me feel good. It was good to know that I'm not the only person out there that's had this experience. I think there are a lot. I think there are a lot more people out there that have had the experience but prefer not to mention it. And you know, if that's what they need to do, good for them. I don't begrudge anybody that. Um, and that's interesting. I thought I'd have a backlash. I thought there'd be pushback at least from my friends in the legal community. Nah, nobody cared. I had a few old friends call me and say, "Are you crazy?" And no, this really happened to me. But I had couple other friends call me and say, you know, good for you. You've got my support. I believe you. Uh, and I want to make that clear. I'm not on a crusade to change anybody's mind about anything or prove something to you. I'm not. That's not the goal. The goal is to tell uh, truly and without embellishment what happened to me, and then take what you will from the story.
Do you think you're telling it to help others primarily, or are you telling it to help yourself and by extension others?
Yeah, I wrote it originally to help me, and just the process of writing it all was helpful for me. And I never imagined that other people would find it, helpful to them. But I
Hmm.
guess it has, and I feel good about that.
Yeah, I think you should. You should be. It's a proud thing. If you can help others, whether you meant it initially or not, it's a good thing. Can only be considered a good thing. Which leads me on to the question about scope. Now, you alluded to obviously thousands of people have contacted you, right? That's just of the ones who are brave enough to contact you. There's probably thousands who might be teetering to contact you. Then there's thousands who are thinking, "No, I'm not going to contact him." Then there's ones that don't even remember the full story. Then there's the ones that remember Slither. And then somebody who don't remember anything. What does that tell you about the scope?
About the scope, it tells me that there is a community of UFO. I'll just call them that. Maybe they're UAPs now. I don't know. They were flying saucers when I was a kid, but we're talking about the same thing. Maybe there's a community of people, with Kathleen Martin and Yvonne Smith and Daryl Sims and myself and Travis Walton, and Calvin Parker, and collectively all of us form this little community. And I joined that community in 2018, and I've seen it just explode since. Um, and that's because I think there's a lot more going on now than there was in 2018. And yeah, the scope is it's broad within that UFO community. As far as the people that read it and didn't say anything, or the people that remembered it and maybe had a flash of a memory, those are folks I don't know, and I can't, unless they contact me, I don't know how big the scope is. And I'm close to 5,000 emails. 5,000 emails sounds like a lot, but we're talking almost 6 years here. Um,
Hmm.
it's a big world.
It is. From having spoken to Preston Dennett, if you know Preston,
Sure.
Wonderful man. I loved his conversation we had. He's saying this scope is like into millions of people worldwide being taken. And if you if you think of that, that's quite frightening, really. That all these people are being taken, and the majority of people won't know that this is happening to them.
It's terrifying,
Hmm.
and Preston might be right on, and I wouldn't dismiss that out of hand because it certainly could be that millions of people have been abducted and either don't speak because they don't want to, or they're afraid to, or because they don't remember.
Yeah. A huge
I asked
scale.
the question to Yvonne Smith, have you had people come to you that say, I just had this, I don't know what I had, but I had this crazy thing happen, you know, could you, and I want to know what happened. Can you hypnotically repress me? And sometimes she does, and people start screaming and crying and reliving a very traumatic event.
Hmm.
And
Which,
I think
go on.
bringing this traumatic event forward, I think if you keep that bottled up inside you, I think that that's a bad thing because you can't fully process it. And my friend Toby struggled with alcohol a lot, and really was only a mild social drinker before this event. Um, but and the reason he drank was the reason a lot of people told me that they drink because it's the only way they can get sleep.
Hmm.
They don't go to bars during the day, they don't drink during the day, but at night, they pound some vodka and they go and just pass out. Because when you go to bed and you go to sleep, you know, you're not in control, and that's when the monsters come out.
Hmm.
So I
Did
understand that.
did he ever say to you that he had a regression, or had he just blotted it out with alcohol and that was it?
I only know about Toby's experience with alcohol from his ex-wife, who was his wife when we were together. Um, there's an interesting story that I left out that I really need to tell, and that is that when we got back from Devil's Den, well, Toby and I were hurt. We were seriously dehydrated, and seriously dehydrated. And I had this red rash over every inch of my body. It looked like a sunburn. I never blistered, and it was only mildly sore. And we go. Both of our wives took us to the hospital, and of course that's where we were. We know everybody. We know the docs, the nurses. We know everybody, and everyone's like, "What'd you do to yourself? How'd you get like this?" One of the doctors said, "Did you put yourself on a spit and have Toby turn you around to get you?"
You were the first sausage on the Barbie that night.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's well said. Um, and I told him the truth, Doc. I don't know.
Hmm. Travis Walton also came back, didn't he? Severely dehydrated,
Yes,
I believe.
I wanted to tell you about the reaction of the United States Air Force.
Okay.
When we got back, Toby and I were separated. I was in one treatment room, he was in another. And there's a guy named Robert Hastings who wrote the book UFOs and Nukes.
I
He
know
was
the
in,
name. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's in touch with a lot of vets. And he says that from a military standpoint, it's very common to take those people and bust them up. So you got three people that see something, you send one to Germany, one to Japan, and one to Idaho. I don't know. Uh, so
That's the
it,
same
it
trick that the aliens are playing, though, isn't it?
it is because I had that change of mindset toward my friend.
Hmm. It's obviously a powerful tactic.
Yes, and I was admonished that I was told this by the hospital commander. You're to have no contact with Sergeant Tobias. That means verbally, by phone, in writing, messages through a third party. You're not to contact him. And he goes on with a litany of ways I could contact him. And he says, all of these, plus any way you can think of, you're not to have contact with him. Do you understand me? And I just said, yes, sir. And he added, that's an order, Sergeant Lovelace. And if you violate that order, there will be consequences. Um, and I actually liked the guy. I mean, I thought he was a good guy. I think he was telling me that telling me to be careful,
Yeah.
um, because the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, the OSI. The OSI is to the Air Force what NCIS is to the Navy. It's the top of their law enforcement branch, and Richard Doty uh, can tell stories about the OSI, and from what I understand, what they did to me um, was common back in the day, back in the you know mid '70s, early '80s,
Mm.
and they put me through an interrogation uh, at OSI headquarters, and they drugged me with a drug called sodium amytal, and I'm told that they did this a lot, a lot, and it's a fast acting hypnotic, and they gave it to me intravenously in my arm, and it took me to a weird place mentally, and they asked me a lot of questions, and I answered them truthfully, and the guy that's asking me the question is a psychiatrist who I'm sure was must have been competent in hypnosis in retrospect when I look back at it. You know, he began this whole thing by saying, Sergeant Lovelace, you and your friend Toby went on a camping trip, didn't you? All leading questions. Yes, sir, we did. And he says, my, that must have been exciting. And I said, it was. And he said, and you saw some funny lights in the sky, didn't you, Terry? And I said, yes, sir. And he says, but those weren't funny lights. Who were they, Terry? And I said they were the space people. I have no idea. I have no clue where that answer came from. I would never say that. I just wouldn't say that.
Mm.
Um, but in that state, I said that. And, I don't know.
Weird, isn't it?
It
Why
is
would they
weird.
want to get involved unless they clearly know something behind the scenes is going on?
You know, I can only grasp at straws. I have no idea what their logic is. I talked to Lou Elizondo one-on-one about this, and I can't speak for Lou, but I'll say that he acknowledged that what was done to me had also been done to others.
Mm.
And if he knows, he's not telling me what the end game is, and I can respect that. But somebody knows. I'd sure like to know. I wish I knew.
That's the point of the whole regression thing, isn't it? You want to know everything, but I understand the door being put in the way because, like I said, I do the same. Let's move on. Oh, we covered what drove you to write the book. Since coming into the public gaze, what has really changed for you?
I didn't anticipate writing this book would create, I don't want to say a hobby, I don't want to say a job, but created, and I was retired. I retired in late 2012. And I won't say that I did this as a way to work during retirement because I found out being retired is kind of boring.
Yeah, it is. I think humans, we need stuff to keep us occupied here and in here.
We do. So I
Mm.
wrote a second book, and then I wrote a third. The second book is a collection, mostly a collection of the stories that these other folks mailed to me, uh, and some other stuff that I wanted to put in the first book, and my editor's like, no, 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 save this for a second book. Oh, I did. But when you run out of material, when you run out of things to say, if you're if your ethics are maybe skewed, hey, you could just make up some stuff. But I'm not,
Embellish. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I know a lot of people in this UFO community that I think are the same way, are ethical and truthful. Um, I know a couple, not so much, but most of them are. And I wrote a third book about near-death experiences, something completely off the charts.
That's almost my next question. That's three questions slightly ahead, so I'll get to that in a sec. But do you go to speaking conferences? Do you do you go along on the UFO tours and
Yes,
stuff?
I've been to many. I've been to UFO Congress in Phoenix, and then like the biggest, supposedly the best conference is uh, in Joshua Springs. I can't think of the name of it.
I don't matter, but you go there
Uh,
anyway. Yeah.
yeah, I've been to a bunch of conferences and spoke, and I enjoy speaking because I spoke a lot in my work, and it's kind of second nature to me to stand up in front of a group of people and talk. So I enjoy it. I enjoy myself there.
Good. Now, the reason I asked that question is, and I think you actually alluded to this, and I'm going to read this verbatim because the question is meant with sincerity, but it may come across weird. So this may sound dodgy, but it's meant with all sincerity. You know you're telling the truth, right? Because you're inside your head, you know what you saw, you know what you did, etc. But sometimes when you hear other people's stories at these conferences and the like, do you sometimes doubt or do you always believe because weirdness has happened to you?
In other words, when I hear stories, do I judge them
In a way,
and
yeah.
find one more credible than another?
Yeah, yeah.
Find someone I think is very, it's not within me to judge somebody else's experience because my experience was surreal enough. My TV turning on is surreal enough.
Yeah, true.
So somebody sits down and tells a fantastic sounding story. I don't know where it comes from. Yeah, yes, there have been a few people that I've met at UFO conferences that I thought might be disingenuous. Of
Mm.
course, we didn't say who.
No, of course.
And I think the bulk of the emails that I got were um, were mostly people were mostly sincere, mostly truthful. If you're writing to a perfect stranger, it's easier to tell your secrets to for some reason.
No, it is. That's why most of us are comfortable speaking to a therapist of whatever kind, aren't we? Because they're not in our life directly.
That's right. I
Mm.
agree with that.
So let's hit to the topic of your third book, which is An American Near-Death Experience. Why this subject?
When I During the pandemic, um, I'm getting these emails. I try to answer every single one I got. If there's anybody out there and I missed your email, I'm sorry, but I do a good job getting up every morning, going through my emails and responding to those who write to me. And during the pandemic, I had exactly, well, really, I'll say four people. I could say five, but I'll say four. That's a long story. I won't go into that. So let's say I had four people write to me about an NDE experience that they had and ask me if I see any commonality between their experience and the alien abduction experience.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, I don't. I mean, I didn't. I get, but it's a stretch for me to kind of in my head put any nexus between the two. But what was interesting to me was the demographics. I had four people to write to me. Three of them were women. All three women were medical doctors. All three had an incredible near-death experience. And they all live in different parts of the country and are unknown to one another. And the fourth one is a man living in New York City who is a marketing executive. Um, so I got to know these women, and I two of them in particular who had these experiences. And the plan was I wanted to write with them in a partnership. And I don't use their real name for this reason, but they're both um, middle age, one close to retirement, and they said that within the medical community, a lot of people don't believe this at all. I asked my doctor, "Do you believe it?" No, 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 that can't happen. When you're dead, you're dead. My best friend in Dallas is a practicing psychiatrist. I'm like, and I offered him a copy of my book. He's like, "Oh, that's bunk. I don't believe it." He said, "Sorry, not calling you a liar, but he said,
But I am calling you a liar, yeah.
yeah, yeah, or at least calling my sources a liar
Yeah.
because I'm presenting their story, which is harder than writing my own story. But they have what I thought was a very credible story.
Mm.
It's a
Yeah,
weird time.
near death is fascinating, isn't it? It's a fascinating topic.
It is. It is.
I mean, I was speaking to somebody yesterday on this topic and the day before, or 2 days before, um, and it was almost we came to the conclusion, or they did, plus I think that way anyway, that near death experiences are a nudge onto a different path because we've been going a different way for whatever reason. Is that consistent across those people that you were speaking to?
I mean, it's kind of the same metaphor. Uh, I would say it's like they pulled back the curtain and saw some things, and then the curtain closed. Um, that was the metaphor I had in my mind. But no, that's absolutely a descriptive metaphor.
Hmm.
I know this that these four people had this experience, and they all four tell me that it was profoundly life changing. Uh, one was a Buddhist, one was a like a evangelical Christian, one was Jewish, and did I say Buddhist?
You did, yeah.
I can't remember what the fourth one is.
Scientologist. No.
Maybe as good as anything. But what's interesting is they all came back with a disdain for religion. And they all four are adamant this wasn't a religious experience at all. This was purely a spiritual experience. And none of them go back to an organized religion. Well, the one who's a Buddhist goes back because it's part of her culture. She
Yeah.
was originally from Taiwan. Um, so they said this was just a unique, and they tell me they have no fear of death. That whatever happened to them impressed on them so much that they're confident there's an afterlife, that they have no fear of death. And I thought it was curious too. All four of them told me that the reality that they had experienced while they were dead was more real to them than this reality.
Than this, yeah. It seems a common trope, doesn't it? Which tells you a story again.
Yeah.
Did they all say the same thing? Like that, because the chap I spoke to yesterday, a chap called Mark Anthony, he was saying they were all electromagnetic energy, yeah. So we're just floating about, and these are containers that we come in, and that you go back to, if you will, an ocean of these entities that all form and become one. Is that the sort of thing they were saying?
They all went to a place. Every one of them told me they went to a place, with one exception, a lady who was in an automobile accident. Um, she was in the passenger seat of a car. Her boyfriend was driving. She was 19 years old. A good friend of both of them was in the back seat and driving a BMW, and they got into a horrific car accident. And she remembers leaving her body, seeing her body in this wrecked car, seeing her shattered body, and thinking, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to go back to that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to go back to that pain. Yeah.
She said that the three of them had a shared experience where they all three held hands and went up. And then her two friends continued the journey, and she was told, sorry, you got to go back. No explanation, no negotiation, just bam, right back into her body. And she said it hurt, you
I
know.
bet. That must be profound, that one even more, because if it were you on your own going through it, that's profound in and of itself. But then to have that experience of holding hands with other people as they go up and then they've passed on, that's like, whoa, that's like next level.
It is. And they all went to this place. That's like the main protagonist of this book is the Buddhist. And she was raised in a Buddhist household. And when she died, she says she saw herself in this beautifully manicured lawn with a pond with koi fish and a monk in robes, orange robes, a Buddhist monk. And there was a bench, and they sat together and talked. And he answered every question that she had regarding life and death. And he told her, you're not going to remember some of this, but you will remember some. And I thought it was just interesting. The one who was a fundamentalist Christian saw Jesus Christ. The one was Roman Catholic. That's what I put
Okay.
in. One was Roman Catholic who saw angels. The guy who was the marketing manager in New York City died on an operating table. He was having a heart catheter, and he passed away on the table. And they brought him back. He was only dead, minute or so, but it made a profound experience on him. He met a being of light that he couldn't describe. So it seems like the whatever event they experience is catered to them culturally, personally, to their belief system.
Yeah.
And that's the one tie that I see to the abduction experience is when I was a kid, I saw little monkeys in my room. And I got letters, emails from people who said that they saw orbs of light, deer, owls, lots of owls, Disney characters. I mean, all manner of creatures visited these kids at night. And of course, it was ET, or it was a dream. But we're not talking about a one on and done here. We're talking about a repetitive experience. So I think that ET caters that experience to something that the child will find benign and not see as threatening. I thought these little monkeys were like circus monkeys. I thought they were funny. So I think that the experience is tailor-made for the person, maybe.
Yeah, I agree with you on that from the conversations I've had. It's highly intriguing and almost makes me want to go through an experience myself, but I clearly don't want to die, but you know what I mean? It makes you fascinated in it. You want to experience it yourself.
It is. It is because, they all came across to me like, I know something you don't know, and it's huge. And I can't tell you, you're going to have to experience it for yourself.
What is frustrating is that whole he told me everything I wanted to know, answered every question, but by the way, you can't take some of this back with you. That is so frustrating because the people on this side want to know, don't we?
Yes,
And we
you
can't
sure
get to
do.
it.
You sure do.
I know it is highly frustrating, but I'm sure it's for good reasoning. Who am I to ask or judge? But hey ho.
Yeah.
Let's move on to just some more topics before we enter the Koit zone. Have you seen that jellyfish UFO video?
Probably a dozen times.
What do you think
And
of that?
I don't know. I'll tell you, what I wanted to find out, and I did find out, was who filmed it and under what conditions. And it was filmed on a U.S. Army base in Iraq in 2018, and it was filmed by security cameras that are property of the U.S. government. And anything flying or entering their airspace, this camera tracks it. And it was tracked on through thermal imaging. Nothing showed up on normal regular camera. They told me that or they said that, what do you call it? Night vision. Yeah, that the thing was invisible to night vision too. I don't know. I saw Nick Pope on TV say, about 50% believe it and 50% think that it could have been a projected image or something man-made. But he thinks the experience was real. I sure think it was a real experience. I don't know. I pay pretty careful attention to the news, and there have been just a ton of UFO sightings across the United States, well, across the world.
Mm.
And I wonder, are they, because all this is in the news and it's in controversy and it's being better reported, or is it because there really is more activity? I don't know.
One could feed the other. Yeah, it's such a strange one because not only of the fact it's recorded and it's being released, that side of things, but it's such a strange shape, the way it moves compared to everything else. It's just odd.
I saw a compilation that someone did because I remember back in the 80s, maybe, there was a show called That's Incredible or Sightings, one of the two. And they had something in the sky from Mexico that looked a lot like this. And, they showed the image of it. And yeah, it did look pretty much like it. I mean, not exactly like it. And they saw it visually, not thermally. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'd love to see more because I think there is more of it, isn't there, where it goes into the ocean and all sorts of things that Jeremy Corbell said. So I want to see
that I'd
that.
love to see.
Yeah.
Because the Tic Tacs from the Nimitz carrier group, the Tic Tacs that flew all around them, that his first name doesn't matter. Said a bunch of people said that when the Tic Tacs hit the water, even at a high rate of speed, it never broke a wave. In other words, it's just like it just slipped in the water. And if something comes up, going under 200 miles an hour, I don't know, it's coming up fast, doesn't break a wave, doesn't disturb the water surface tension.
That's what makes us think that it's more of an interdimensional thing, isn't it? Because it's sort of like slightly phased out of our vibration of our planet. Therefore, it doesn't matter what it goes through because there's no interaction there. It's like passing, that this atom is passing through that one, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of changed my mind. I'm thinking we're dealing with something interdimensional. Yeah, and that explains the elusive nature of them, how they can pop in and pop out of existence. I don't know what to think about Bigfoot.
Other than he's got a really big foot, yeah.
Other than he's got really big feet, yes.
Yeah. That's another fascinating topic. I'm speaking to Stan Gordon in a week or so, and they're linked to sort of like UFOs as well, aren't they, from his perspective? So I'm dying to get into that because that's a quality link. We'll see. Will we ever get full governmental disclosure, do you think, in our lifetimes or in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
No, I don't think we will. Based on my experience as a civil servant, there were two kinds of civil servants. People like me that were just hired to do a job. And then there is I was an assistant attorney general. There is a guy, a man or a woman, who is the elected attorney general. And that's a political position.
Hmm.
way different than me and way different than my motivations. And the two are just kind of a two different worlds. Uh, so politicians being politicians, I don't think we'll ever get the full story. I think if the full story came out, um, a lot of people would be in trouble. A lot of people who have passed away, their reputation would be tarnished with their surviving family members.
Yeah.
There's just all kinds of consequences that could happen because after what happened to me, I don't know what limits there were to what they did.
So you think it won't come from a human side? If anything, it's going to be an appearance by them.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it seems like we don't know it's a slow ramp up of um, appearances around the world, do we? But there's obviously a ramp up of more things being recorded, but that could go hand in hand with our technology getting better.
yes.
But who knows? Who knows? Um, the last one on this one, and this is going to be the hardest one for you to answer, but I like to see where people put their eggs on this topic as well. How
Sure.
does all the strange phenomena play into the big picture? So, aliens, death, ghosts, whatever you want to call it. Where do you see, how is the world and all the other things created? Where does it lie? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I have an answer for it that's
Oh,
truthful.
amazing.
Well, no, it's before my experience. I looked at the world as a material thing, kind of Newtonian physics. The universe and the stars and planets revolving around them, governed by the laws of physics, and what you see is what you get. And I believe that there might be some element of spirituality, a religious component to all this. Um, but maybe the stuff that I saw was pretty much everyday stuff that could be explained until I was 6 when I saw that so big silver disc above my head and heard sound change. And then I connected that to these little monkeys that I used to see. And I think they've been following me for a lifetime. And I think the truth is that we can't see everything. I mean, I look at the human eye, and I mean, we see what's in a range of vision. And there are all kinds of things. There are all different fields of vision. X-ray is a field of vision. Uh, there could be entities in this room. I don't know. I don't have the ability to perceive them, but that doesn't mean they couldn't be there.
Yeah.
So, but inexplicable things do happen. My TV turns on by itself. That's not normal.
You know it's your
That's
wife, don't you, with the secret remote, doing it at night to get you out of bed.
no, no, no. I don't think.
I jest, of course. I do. It's brought up one more question before we move on to the question I ask everyone, which is: Do you is anyone in your family reporting things as well? So, like previous to you, like your mum and dad or grandmother, or any, if you've got any sons and daughters, etc. Is
Yes,
anything
my
there?
dad drove a truck for a living, and he was, kind of a blue collar, hardworking guy. Um, and anytime the television would talk about maybe there's a UFO in the St. Louis area, he would grab binoculars and run outside. And anytime there was a story about a UFO on television, he would be, I want to hear this, I want to hear this. Um, but when I asked him, I said, is this stuff real? He's like, no, 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 this is all stuff from the Russians. This is all communist propaganda trying to.
Bloody Russians! Yeah.
But I think that he believed, and I think he had that belief was based on experience. I have two sisters, or had two sisters. I have one now. I have two sisters. Both were 10 and 12 years older than me, respectively. Um, the one who was 12 years older than me passed away. But after I wrote my book, I tried to give her an autographed copy and said, here, it's written by your brother. And she looked at it and said, what is this about? And I told her, and she said, I want no part of this. She said, I don't want to offend you, but take your book. I don't want to talk about it, which is pretty telling to me.
Mm.
My other sister says that she had one event, and that happened when she was 9 years old, and my family was living in East St. Louis, Illinois, where I was born, in like a new suburban area. And she and a kid next door named Billy Mulligan would ride their bikes around this roadway that they made, so they put houses on either side of them eventually. So there was this nice paved bicycle path they'd ride on. And she said they were at the end, the farthest end they could be on the pavement. And she said that she felt funny and that there was a rush of wind and leaves blew. And she says, then Billy and I saw this globe, this rotating silver globe. And she says it was maybe 6 feet in diameter. And it was in a field. And that was the thing that caused the air. Because she said there was tall grass and weeds in this field. And she said, I could see that it was having an effect on the vegetation. And she says, that was a big deal to me. I told mom and dad, and they, said, shut up, don't you dare tell anybody that. They'll think you're crazy. They'll think we're crazy. It was a different time.
So it's clearly there then in your family, essentially.
Yeah.
That sunlight's definitely trying to get you, isn't it?
It really is. It really
No.
is.
Do you need to get up and close the curtain or anything?
Yes, excuse me just a
Yeah,
second.
it's worth doing. What he was doing was making you shift further over, so in a few minutes you'd be off screen. Okay, a question I ask everyone, and you cannot use your abduction story and you cannot use your poltergeist story for this one, but what strange things have happened to you in your life? Now, that could be meeting a weird person, or it could just be another strange paranormal event, but what else strange has happened to you?
I'm going to leave, what I call increased intuition. I'm going to leave that, or the psychic thing. I'm going to leave all that out of the equation.
Okay.
And what's happened to me in the past is in 2007, I was living and working in American Samoa, a little island in the South Pacific. And I had some leave time, and my wife and I flew to Chicago. We have friends there. And it was Christmas time. And I'm walking around downtown Chicago. And, my wife is somewhere else. We're going to meet up. And I'm in this bookstore. I mean, like Barnes and Noble bookstore. And it was jam-packed. And I'm over by, of course, what am I looking at? I'm looking at UFO books and paranormal books. And there was a Black woman in her maybe early 60s, dressed in normal street clothes, nothing remarkable. She was wearing a coat because it's cold outside, had a scarf around her neck, and wore eyeglasses. And she smiled at me and nodded. And how you doing? Merry Christmas, back at her. And she looked at me and she said, when you were little, they took you too. And she turned around, and I had a chill go up my spine. She turned around and mixed in with the crowd, and I couldn't find her. I don't know what that was all about, but that's something that happened to me that I can't explain.
That's kind of harrowing on two levels. One, she could have been a spirit that you did see that just wanted to tell you.
Yes.
And then two is corroboration that weirdness has been happening with you being interacting with these monkey people,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is synchronicity. Um, you know, I look at my phone and it's 3:33. Sometime later, I look at my phone and it's 5:55. There's a triple digit phenomenon. I was never aware of it. Robert Hastings told me about it. And he says that no, it's a real thing. And I'm like, no, that's
Mm.
just, that's subject to chance. I mean, that's statistically it's subject to chance. Randomness is a big thing. And he's like, well, I don't know, but it is for me. And sure enough, that triple digit thing came up, and I bought a new car in June. But I bought a slightly used car. I bought a doesn't matter what I bought. Um, I looked
Yeah.
at the
It was a car.
odometer.
Yeah.
The odometer had 6,666.05 miles. So I got this string of six digits. Does that mean anything?
Yeah. You
I,
bought it from a devil. Well,
yeah, sometimes I think so. Just synchronistic things that you know, I had a guy send me or call me, and his area code was 817. And that same day, which was Sunday a week ago, that same day, I'm watching television and it's talking about an event. It was a news story about something that happened at 817 Elm Street or whatever. So that 817 popped up again. And I said, well, that's within the realm of chance. That's chance. Because I want to convince myself it's chance. And no, it came up again because, I hadn't looked at the clock in a long time and I wasn't keeping track of it. But sure enough, the clock said 817. And, there are a lot of minutes in an hour. The chance of me calculating that in my head and looking up and seeing it, even on a subconscious level, I don't think is there. So I think all three of these events, Carl Jung wrote about this, Jung or Jung, however you want to pronounce it, uh, who was really a cool guy. He wrote a book on synchronicity, I believe. And
I don't know his book, but I do know the chap. And the whole numbers thing is interesting, right? It must have been about a decade for me. I went through a period of time where this was happening to me. I kept getting up at 11:11. It was when I didn't have a job or something, but it was always that. I can't remember. It was always a code that kept coming through. And funnily enough, I spoke to a numerologist a little while back, and he was telling me all about that phenomenon, and it's very common. And he thinks it's a code in the universe, and at that point, it's telling you something. There's an event happening, and it's like a sign for you to notice something.
I maybe just intuitively I feel that way. I feel like this
Mm.
has to mean something.
Yeah,
The universe doesn't stage synchronicity for my amusement. It has to have a meaning.
yeah, I agree. But whether we've deciphered it correctly, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah.
How do I know? It maybe means keep doing what you're doing. Maybe it means stop what you're doing. You know, I don't
Mm.
know.
Yeah, it's a strange one, but thank you for answering that. We are now going to enter though the Koit zone. Koit zone. Now, in the Koit zone, I will just ask you some quickfire or some random questions. Most are just for jest, but there's some serious ones in there as well. So just play along and answer best you can. So, first one: what's the most money you've ever found?
Found money.
Yeah.
Uh, when I lived in Lansing, Michigan, before I went to Samoa on that job, I lived in Lansing, Michigan, and I had a small law practice in a little place downtown Lansing. It's a capital city of Lansing, and I used to cut through this small city park to get to the courthouse. And one day, walking to the courthouse, I found $100 bill.
Oh, nice.
Now that was a big deal, but I got to say that was an area of town that at night had drug activity and all kinds of things like that. So could attribute it to that, but boy, it was a big deal to me.
What did you do with your illicit drug money?
I went to a casino and gambled it.
Did you lose it all?
I don't remember. I think I saved enough to buy dinner or something.
I think if you'd have won, you'd remember that.
I would remember that.
Yeah,
And I'm
you
not a
lost.
gambler. I don't want to give any that impression. I'm not.
Still, that's a good find. That beats any of the finds that we've done over here because we have a money game, me and Tiff, and we go out looking for money on the road. We found like 40 quid once and stuff, but $100 bill is amazing. Well played. What's the last TV show you binged?
Oh gosh, probably Walking Dead. I I don't get cable television.
Okay.
I haven't in probably 12 years. Um, but I do get YouTube, and I watch 7 or 8 um, hours of YouTube a day. I got nothing else to do.
Well, if you ever find yourself at a loose end and you really want to disgust yourself, watch some of my strange animations online. Don't. um,
No,
what annoys you the most?
um, I got a list running through my head, and let me pick the one that I think is the most annoying. And this isn't a person, but what annoys me the most is my inability to be good with computers, my inability to grasp them. No, I'm serious, man. It's you know when I grew up, they weren't a thing. When I had a law practice, I had a secretary, and I said, this is what I need done, and she said, I can show you how to do this. I'm like, look, that's what I pay you for. You know, I'm not
Yeah,
interested. I got things to do, and I had lots of opportunities that where I could have learned uh, good skills that I could use today, and I didn't do it. And now it's just daunting. It's too big a task to me to look at. So I kind of limit myself to Google searches and emails and whatever else I find interesting in watching podcasts.
that
Um,
sounds like you're never ever going to try then, isn't it? Or never going to challenge yourself to do it.
no, I'm done. I'm done.
Fair play.
Google and email meets most of my needs. So,
Cool. What's the last takeaway you ordered?
wow, that's pre-pandemic. My wife and I, during the pandemic, uh, started cooking more and discovered that, you know, maybe we're trying harder, but we like what we make at home.
Oh, don't blame you. Food tastes better when you do it yourself.
Yeah, and it's expensive, and food is much more expensive now than it was pre-pandemic. So, um, but I can't tell you the last time I ate takeaway because I just remembered my son came and he brought hamburgers from a place called Jake's, and Jake's has a couple locations around the Dallas area, and they're just really, really good.
Cool.
I got a what's called a bottle cap burger with fried slices of jalapeno, which I guess are to represent bottle caps. 2 patties of meat and a whole bunch of stuff, and sweet potato fries. Uh, you know,
Out of
tasty.
10?
Hmm,
Out of 10? What score?
Probably a 7.
Okay, there's still a healthy shout out to Jake's there for your 7 out of 10. Well played. Um, you might have answered this earlier because we did cover some bits, but what scares you?
I think what scares me the most is finding myself in events where I have zero control. Um, I like to feel like I have at least some control of the outcome. And, health problems, the weather, um, the idea that I could be run over by a bus. I mean, it could happen.
Yeah,
Um,
computers. There's yeah.
Those things I
Yes.
have no control over or even no cognitive knowledge that they're coming.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Fair. What is your biggest life achievement to date?
My
Life achievement.
biggest life achievement.
Yeah.
Um, I think, going to law school and passing a bar exam, and I'm the first one in my family to attend college, much less grad school. Um, so I'm not, I don't want to come across as being rude, but for me, there's satisfaction in it. I'll call it satisfaction.
Yeah,
And
no, that's cool. You should be
probably the
proud of.
hardest thing I ever done.
Yeah.
Law school was hell. It was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. Um, for a day, you become godlike. What would you do?
I would, and this is going to sound crazy, but I would eliminate borders between countries, and I would take away all the weapons.
You know people would start killing each other with cutlery, don't you?
I do know that. I do know that. So, plastic forks. Better than that. No, I'd like to do something to if I'm God, I want to do something to make this planet better. Fix climate change maybe, but war seems to be top of the list for me right now.
Very prevalent at the moment, isn't it? That one
It is.
seems to be a contagion at the moment. What's the most amazing animal?
I'm a big cat guy. I love house cats. I've always had a house cat. I've had many of them. Um, and I find my cats to be a good companion. People say, oh, they're aloof. They're not like dogs. They don't give you
That is
affection. And,
true.
you know, not so. Not so. Mine are very affectionate and, you know, do everything that would ask of a pet. So the most amazing animal, yeah, sounds kind of lame, but I'm going to say house cat
No, that's
because
fair. Has this ever happened to you though with a cat, right? It sits on your lap and you might just be in shorts or whatever, but it jumps off, and as it jumps off, your whole stomach is scraped or your legs or whatever.
sure, it digs its hind claws into your leg.
I got a scar for like here to down to my stomach, left over from like 15 years ago where that happened. Cats, bloody Russians. If you didn't live in Texas or the USA, where else would it be?
This is probably not my first choice. And to be candid, I'm here because our kids and grandchildren are here.
Okay.
So where else would I be? If I could live anywhere, um, I'd say somewhere in the South Pacific, maybe Hawaii, somewhere in the South Pacific, because I liked it there. I like being near an ocean, and
Mm.
I'd go back to a place like that. Maybe New Zealand. New Zealand would work.
Yeah, oh, it would work. Yeah, not many big things there that are going to kill you animal wise as well. That's another win.
True, those are all in Australia. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And you've got some in your country as well. But yeah, Australia's the mega killer, isn't it? Don't go there. Um, and that is no disrespect to anyone watching from Australia, by the way. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Flintstones.
Excellent. And the final question in the Koit zone: baked potatoes. Do you eat the skin or do you leave it?
I eat it, at least some of it. But when I eat a baked potato, it's covered in real butter and sour cream and chives and maybe bacon, and it's a meal.
Yeah,
Um,
hell yeah.
yeah, I do.
You eat it. Good on you. Okay, thank you for participating in the Koit Zone. That is the end of the Koit Zone. So we have two questions left. And the first of those is, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
I like walking, and I like walking a lot. And one of the things I do, and this is going to sound morbid, but I like to walk in cemeteries. I have since I was a kid. And I have an app on my phone called Necrophonics, which is like a ghost hunting machine.
Hmm.
and it runs through the gamut of a spectrum of radio waves, and you turn it on and say, "Hey, how you doing?" And sometimes it'll say, "Fine, how's your day?" You know, it'll be
Yeah.
something crazy.
Um,
I don't know.
prior
It's outside. It's nice. I used to like to run, and when I
Mhm.
ran, I always ran in the cemetery because I had no cars chase me, no dogs. It was peaceful. It was well manicured. If there were a funeral, I'd be sure and stay away from it. Um, yeah, a good walk in the cemetery is good for
Cool.
me.
Yeah. I was going to say to you, what do you get out of it prior to like the app side of things, but you've just said it's the peaceful nature of it, which is cool. And the last question I ask everyone, what are you currently working on?
I'm working on another book on near-death experiences, and I am collecting stories from credible people. What I did in Free Fall was I took two stories and kind of melded them together and wrote it more in a novel style as opposed to how I would normally write, which is a little more on the side of technical writing. Um, but yeah, I'm working on that, and I keep my laptop handy. I can work on it when there's nothing else to do or there's nothing on TV on YouTube to watch. I go on my computer and pull up Microsoft Word and type away.
Excellent stuff. Terry, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. So thanks for agreeing to the interview. Thanks for being a gentleman on the interview. It's been amazing.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to your amazing audience. You
Yes, and
appreciate
a final note there. Links to Terry's site and books will be in the description. If you like what you've heard today, go and investigate those books and leave a review if you buy one. That really will help the author, and that really helped Terry in this case. But other than that, thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, everyone.
God bless.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.